The Victorian kitchen does not begin with the smell of food or the warmth of a hearth, but with the scent of cold, stale ash and the heavy, metallic tang of cast iron. At 4 in the morning, the kitchen is the coldest room in the house, a cavern of shadows where the only light is the flickering flame of a single tallow candle. The first task of the day is the most ritualistic and perhaps the most somber, the cleaning of the coal range. Imagine the sound of a small metal shovel, its edges worn smooth by years of use, scraping against the rough firebrick of the grate. There is a dry, percussive rattle as the clinkers, the fused remains of yesterday's fire, fall heavily into the ashpan below. A fine gray dust rises into the air, hanging momentarily in the candlelight before settling on the flagstone floor. This is the quietest hour, where every scrape of metal and every rustle of the cinder feels amplified in the stillness of the sleeping house. Before a single match is struck, the stove itself must be tended to with a process known as black leading. This is the act of preserving the iron, and it is a labor of repetitive, hypnotic motion. The cook applies a thick, graphite-based paste to the cold surface of the range using a small, stiff-bristled brush. Then comes the buffing. The sound is a rhythmic, constant scratch, scratch, scratch of the bristles against the heavy cast iron. As the brush moves back and forth, the dull, soot-colored metal begins to take on a deep, silvery sheen, a luster that reflects the dim morning light. It is a tactile experience. You can almost feel the resistance of the iron through the handle of the brush. This thin layer of graphite is all that stands between the heart of the kitchen and the creeping orange spread of rust, ensuring the stove remains a centerpiece of functional beauty for another day. Lighting a coal range is an exercise in patience and a delicate dance with the laws of physics. It begins with the laying of the foundation, tightly twisted balls of yesterday's newspaper placed at the bottom, followed by a lattice of dry, resinous pine kindling. Then comes the coal. The sound of coal being poured from a heavy, black-painted scuttle is a sharp, chaotic avalanche of stone hitting iron, a series of high-pitched clinks and deep thuds. The cook selects the nubbly pieces, neither too large nor too small, to ensure the air can still circulate. There is a singular moment of anticipation before the strike of a long sulfur match. The flame is applied to the paper, and for a few seconds there is only the soft crackle of burning wood. Then, as the heat begins to rise, there is the distinctive hollow woof of the draft catching, a sign that the fire has taken hold and the kitchen's heartbeat has returned. A Victorian cook communicates with her stove through a series of sliding metal handles known as dampers and flues. To the untrained eye, these are merely knobs, but to the cook they are the controls of a massive heat-breathing machine. Sliding a damper open creates a hollow, whistling rush of air, the audible sound of the fire being fed, growing hungrier and hotter by the second. Closing a flue creates a heavy, muffled thud that vibrates through the floorboards, redirecting the intense heat away from the chimney and toward the bread ovens or the water boiler. It is a language of iron sliding on iron, a tactile and mechanical dance that dictates the temperature of the entire house. The range creaks and groans as the metal expands, a chorus of tiny tinks and pops that signal the kitchen is finally beginning to warm against the morning chill. In the Victorian kitchen, water is not a silent utility but a heavy and precious resource that must be manually summoned. In the corner of the room, standing over a deep white-glazed ceramic sink, is the hand pump. It is made of heavy brass or painted iron, cold to the touch in the early hours. The process of drawing water is a rhythmic, physical labor. First, there is the metallic clank of the long handle being raised, followed by a hollow, wheezing gurgle of air as the vacuum is created within the pipe. Then, after a few steady strokes, the sound changes to a deep, splashing arc as the first gush of cold water hits the bottom of a heavy ceramic pitcher. The water is loud and turbulent, echoing off the stone walls of the scullery. It is a reminder that every drop used for tea, for scrubbing, or for boiling has been earned through the strength of the arm. The surfaces of this kitchen are built for endurance, consisting of thick, unsealed scrubbed pine tables and cold, uneven flagstone floors. Cleaning these surfaces is an abrasive sensory process. There are no chemical sprays here. Instead, the cook uses bath brick, a hard block of compressed sand and silt, or a handful of fine grit. The sound is a deep, grating scrape as a heavy wooden-backed brush works the grit into the grain of the wood. It is a dry, sandpaper-like noise that seems to fill the quiet room, a steady shush, shush, shush that slowly whitens the pine until it looks as clean as a bleached bone. On the floors, the wet sand is swilled away with buckets of water, the liquid hissing as it finds the cracks between the stones, leaving behind a damp, earthy smell that lingers long after the sun has risen. Long before the hum of electric refrigeration, the kitchen relied on the icebox, a massive silent cabinet of oak or ash, lined with zinc or tin to trap the cold. The logistics of the morning are dictated by the arrival of the Iceman. You can hear the heavy clatter of his cart on the cobblestones outside before he even enters. He carries a 50-pound block of frozen river water, translucent and blue-white, held in the grip of massive iron tongs. There is a sharp chink as the metal teeth bite into the ice, followed by a dull, heavy thump as the block is seated into the top compartment of the box. It is a massive cooling presence in the corner of the room, radiating a faint chilled mist that smells of frozen ponds and damp wood. The icebox is a luxury of physics, a wooden fortress holding back the heat of the summer. The icebox has its own internal metronomic clock, the constant rhythmic drip-drop of meltwater. As the heavy block of ice slowly loses its battle with the room's temperature, the water trickles through a lead or zinc pipe into a shallow tray hidden at the very bottom. This drip-drop is the heartbeat of the kitchen's preservation system. Every few hours, the tray must be emptied to prevent an overflow onto the flagstones. The sound of the tray sliding out, a thin metallic scrape against the wooden frame, is followed by the careful slosh of icy water as it is carried to the sink. It is a constant reminder of the fleeting nature of coldness in an age of fire, a small repetitive task that requires the cook's attention even in the quietest moments of the afternoon. In the Victorian era, spices do not arrive in convenient powders. They arrive as whole seeds, barks, and crystals that must be broken down by hand. To prepare the day's seasonings, the cook reaches for a heavy mortar and pestle made of thick, unglazed Wedgwood porcelain. The sound of the first crush is a sharp, crystalline snap as peppercorns or rock salt are fractured. This is followed by a deep, circular grinding, a low-frequency grr-grr sound as the stone pestle pulverizes the ingredients against the rough interior of the bowl. As the spices break, they release an intense, concentrated aroma that cuts through the smell of coal smoke and damp stone. It is a grounding, repetitive task that requires a steady hand and a patient rhythm, turning hard, sun-dried botanicals into the fine dust that will flavor the evening's roast. The Victorian knife is a heavy, purposeful tool made of carbon steel, not the lightweight stainless steel of the modern world. It requires constant sharpening on a whetstone, a sound that is a long metallic hiss as the blade is drawn across the lubricated stone. When the prep work begins, the sound of the knife hitting the thick, end-grain wooden chopping block is a solid, percussive tock-tock-tock. There is a satisfying weight to every cut, an organic thud that vibrates through the table. You can hear the watery, crisp snap of a carrot being halved, the papery rustle of onion skins being stripped away, and the wet, heavy slice through a piece of raw beef. In this kitchen, there are no electric motors or spinning blades, only the steady manual rhythm of steel meeting wood, a sound that has remained unchanged for centuries.